T.S. Eliot's poem The Wasteland depicts the world as a spiritually empty landscape as it explores the consequences of war as a result of humanity's evil nature. Picture yourself during a time where the ideas of civilization and natural beauty defined your society. Every text you read emphasized those concepts, every work of art portraying the beauty of nature and humanity. Now, imagine the horrific bloodshed caused by a war and the mockery it must have made of those ideas. This was the reality of the people, including T.S. Eliot, who lived throughout the First World War. They were exposed to the barbaric nature of humankind, and authors, unsurprisingly, began using darker concepts such as death and disillusionment to express the new bleak reality of their society. In The Wasteland, Eliot uses those ideas to explore the new fractured nature of post-war living, whilst also establishing the sense of an entire culture in crisis. Furthermore, the poem's unconventional structure and constant shifts between speakers, time, location, and even language allows the poem to contrast life and death in the old and modern world. If you think about traditional poems, they were commonly written in iambic pentameter, which provided a strong underlying structure and hence a sense of stability. In The Wasteland, Eliot constantly uses enjambment, which causes phrases to sound incomplete. Listen to the following lines. Lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire. There's no constant pulse, which ruins the flow of the poem. Eliot uses enjambment to suggest the idea that conventional literary techniques did not provoke the same sense of closure as they did before, which ultimately represents the social instability caused by the First World War. The Wasteland uses a collage-like structure with a reoccurring pessimistic tone to reflect the disorientation of the post-war period. Pay attention to the fractured manner of the poem's structure, with numerous shifts in speakers, time, location, and language. Notice how it's divided into 5 sections: the burial of the dead, a game of chess, the fire sermon, death by water, and what the thunder said. Each section is complete in itself, and whilst they are not directly connected to each other, they all emphasize on the reality of modern society. Look at how the poem begins with an epigraph in Latin and Greek, which, when translated, describes an Apollonian oracle named Sibyl, who has a strong desire to die. This foreshadows the recurring sense of death and disillusionment throughout the poem. Part 1 depicts a young woman bearing witness to the physical and emotional devastation of the war. The dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. The dead trees and dry stone demonstrates the complete barrenness of modern civilization, symbolizing the difficulty of adjusting to a new way of life. This idea juxtaposes against the traditional concepts of nature and beauty in which society had a strong sense of culture. In Part 4, Eliot describes a man, Phlebas the Phoenician, who was apparently drowned. Whilst both sections have completely different storylines, there is a constant pessimistic tone and idea of death throughout the poem. Furthermore, the collage-like structure embodies the fractured nature of post-war society. It highlights the sense of isolation and the struggle of moving forward from the past. As a result, post-war readers whose lives have been turned upside down by the war are able to deeply connect with Eliot's work. Throughout The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot breaks contextual and structural conventions, allowing him to radically express his new outlook on the world as bleak and completely devoid of meaning. Post-war readers who were traumatized by the carnage of the First World War were able to connect with Eliot's work and its emphasis on death and disillusionment, ultimately revealing the dramatic shift in society's view on life. His ability to reject tradition meant that he was able to discover radical means of expression, which became more prominent within his society. Why does this even matter? Well, it encourages us to develop new progressive ideas and outlooks on life, pushing us to try new things. In the words of T.S. Eliot, we must always take risks. That is our destiny.